can I just ask you something? Because you were just speaking about children before that and upbringing. I was just wondering, at the beginning of the talk, you both touched upon education and how you thought that it might change in the future. I was wondering if you could expand on that a little bit, like what your thoughts of where you see education going.
I see the children teaching the parents and the children teaching the teachers, because I think the children are now coming with an intuitive knowing which they don't necessarily know how to verbalise, which is why arts and drama are such an important part of future education. I see there being huge rows in education where the old school tried to do reading, writing and arithmetic still, and the kids say, you're not teaching us what we need to learn, get over yourselves. I think it's a wonderful time, and I think it's the right way to be, but I think it's pretty tough on everyone concerned. What do you think?
Well, I think that what I call them Aquarian children, I mean, they've been called crystal children and indigo children and all of this sort of stuff, but basically they are, if you like, very high frequency, very sensitive souls who therefore have considerable difficulty fitting into a education system that's, you know, pretty Piscean, and it's, you know, it's actually well out of date. So the new education, yes, indeed, it should include a hefty share of arts, should include something along the lines of martial arts, yoga, meditation, all of the studies of education institutions that are have that as part of the curriculum are showing hugely increased levels of empathy and cooperation and maturity and so on. So I would think that that's a really important part of it. But at the moment, there's so much kind of social disintegration happening, and we're not really acknowledging it. And it's kind of like, you know, the authorities kind of pretend that everything's okay and on track, and in fact it really isn't. So,
And oh, sorry.
No, that's all.
Go on.
So, you know, some of the systems like, you know, Montessori and Steiner and these kinds of educationalists have a great deal to offer. And I think that ultimately the parents are ideally giving the children values that the children can then can receive and work with, but that's difficult. I mean, we're seeing in our society at the moment, increasingly, parents don't seem to be able to give those kinds of values to kids, and more or less saying to the teachers, well, here you go, this is your job now. And teachers aren't actually given that respect or authority by schools, and so you have a kind of thing, well, who's looking after the kids? Nobody is, and they're kind of getting through the best they can.
But we also need to educate on breakup of relationships, how to create families from the resources that are around us rather than a genetically inherited style. We need to broaden education at school to incorporate what the kids need to know. We can worry about the refinements later. And it's going to take some very brave people to do it, because it means challenging authority.
Could you just expand maybe on the arts and the importance of the arts in education?
everybody's heard of Ayurveda, right? Well, Ayurveda is one of the 4 books. Another of the books is about the importance of art in any culture that is healthy and growing and creative. Arts and crafts are disciplines that engage the heart, and they engage the senses in logical but also magical disciplines, and bring them to birth. And therefore they hold, if you like, the kind of psyche of a culture. And that's how important they are, and that's why they should be absolutely encouraged from the earliest age.
Not everyone's heard of Ayurveda. I don't think they have.
Excuse me. I'm 4 children, young children, and I do feel that education has actually changed a lot from when I was in school. I feel that my children are receiving a lot of art, music and drama, much more than before. It's a huge part of at least my children's curriculum, and because I have 4 that are enrolled in different schools, but they're bringing in a lot of art, they're sharing a lot of art, whether it's music, drama, or painting, or drawings. So I do see a big change in that. And
Are you talking on a national level, perhaps, that it has to?
We're talking
but
on
in,
cultural level.
education generally,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Across the board.
There's
just needs to be more, that's all.
one of the features of this time is that there are many examples, usually small examples, of incredibly creative and modern initiatives, and it sounds like, you know, you're part of one, where, you know, everything is kind of correct and right, and is person-centred, and is developing the creativity and intuition of, in this case, children. But it's rather a case of, you know, joining up the dots.
And
Even
it's
if it's just a small
also
teacher, I think they want to-
cultural as well. You know, that different cultures from different countries have to be added and amalgamated so that we all learn from each other. It's great, actually.
Different countries and different cultures sharing, teaching.
Absolutely. Broadening the base. And at the same time teaching the children and the parents and the teachers to recognise that there's always more to learn.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Because dogma is one of the enemies of our time.
The intuition with children, which I really believe very strongly that children, they really speak from the heart, and until they get to a certain age.
But when they're up, at least in my experience, mine are all under 11. It's very honest, and it's very raw, and it's very real. But how does that work in an education? As simple as in a classroom, you have every single child speaking their truth and their intuition. It would be chaotic.
Because you break them down into, I mean, we're not talking about the under 11s. We're talking about slightly older ones. You break them down into groups and you encourage them to input their experience, their culture, their stories, whatever stories they have to tell, they offer to the rest of the group. And then somehow they make a consensus out of all those different stories. And you will find, if I may say so, you will find that your adorable, honest, raw, material children go to bed one night, lovely.
No, I know. I know. I have 4 teenagers.
Yeah. But they'll get through it. They always do.
Will I get through it?